Hi, I'm Patrick Holcombe. I run a small company called Douglas Fur Design, and you might have seen me in a bunch of Timbecon videos. I'm a woodworker here in Melbourne. I make all kinds of stuff, and I've been running this business for 5 or 6 years now, I'd say. I've been making stuff from a very young age. My dad was a maker of all sorts of things. He was actually an English teacher by trade, but he built literally the house I grew up in from scratch with him and his friends out of mud bricks and recycled timber that he and his mates salvaged, and they made every brick on the property by hand, with my mum as well. And so there was just always stuff being made. His workshop wasn't fancy, he just had a bunch of tools, a lot of second-hand stuff that had been handed down, but it was a functional workshop that he built, anything we needed in. So I was always just surrounded by the stuff that you need to make things, and someone there who was comfortable just getting in there and giving it a shot. So making stuff wasn't some special elite skill. It was just, this is just what you do. If something breaks, you go and fix it. We've got, we'll save some money by making this. It was just part of life. Where I grew up was up in Kinglake in the mountains, right in the national park on a really steep top of a mountain, essentially. And in 2009, when the Black Saturday bushfires came through that entire region, my parents passed away up there trying to defend the house. My brother and sister and I were in Melbourne at the time, so we were okay. That was a pretty difficult time for my brother and sister and I. We moved into a house together and just kept each other company and watched a lot of Bruce Willis films for about 6 months. And but we never had any intention of getting rid of that property. And so one of my coping mechanisms right after the fire was this just huge urge to rebuild something. It wasn't realistic at the time because I was in no place emotionally to take on a task of that sort, but within weeks I was designing the new house. Now I'm only finishing that house now, 10 years later, but from that time, my urge to build, to put something back on the property and continue this work that Mum and Dad had spent their entire lives and our entire lives doing was just so strong. The thought of moving away from there feels like, which we're not doing, we're staying up there, but the thought of that feels like losing them again and losing memories from our childhood, because it's so tied to the land and the trails that we'd run through as kids. And some of the gardens have sprung back up, so we've got elements of those things of our upbringing up there as well. During my year of die hard and living in a share house with my brother and sister, an old friend approached me who I'd played music with in high school, and we started a band. We collected some musos together who we'd played with separately in different projects. And over the next 5 years, we played and toured and recorded constantly, made a bunch of EPs and a full album and videos, and played all around Australia with some phenomenal artists. And that was a really important part of my healing, I guess. Being able to put some of my emotions into a song form was a lot easier than just talking about it directly, and it was just such a beautiful, energetic way to have some of those deep feelings with some really close friends and it be a big travelling party at the same time. When we released our album, I just felt like the project had come to a sort of natural end. Logistically, it was becoming really tricky. The touring was definitely paying for the band's business activities, all of our recording and so forth, but it wasn't really paying us a wage. And it was really good creative work, but at the same time, during that period, as a byproduct of needing that flexibility, I'd started working for myself, making stuff, and I was starting to make nice creative pieces and being paid pretty well for that, and holding that up against touring constantly and not being paid for that creative work, I just had to put my energy where I could be fulfilled creatively and also be live off what I was doing. And we could have continued to play and tour indefinitely, but we were putting way more energy into that than I felt like we were getting back at that time. But it was an incredible thing to do, and it was so important. I'm so glad that I did that, and the bonds that I have with those people is something I'll have forever. From when I was very young, earlier than I can remember, Mum and Dad would take all of us camping, and every year we'd go on a big hike together as a family, multi-day hike with backpacks, with little kids, carrying all your food and sleeping gear and tents and so forth. And that's just something that stuck with me. I mean, I grew up in the forest, running around like a mad, dirty child of the wilderness, and that hiking and spending time in the mountains is something that is one of the most important things in my life in terms of making me feel human again, really. Getting out into the wilderness for long periods of time, sometimes by myself, it's something that it keeps me feeling like who I am. My dad was from the United States, and I've always been really drawn to the Sierras and the mountains in the west coast of the US. But Tasmania is my real love. It's one of the most unique places in the world, and we've got some wilderness down there that is unmatched anywhere in the world. When I started working for myself, I had a couple of wonderful, reliable clients who I did handyman work for, and it allowed me to have consistency of work throughout the year, doing 1 or 2 days a week for these handful of clients on a variety of tasks that just pushed me to learn new techniques in all sorts of making and fixing things. And as time went on, those clients asked me to actually make them nice things. So it progressed from, fixing bits and pieces to actually making pieces for them. And that gave me the confidence to start, photographing and displaying my work in a way that would attract new clients. And so from then, the growth has just been primarily word of mouth. Once I started making pieces for people, I had a real, it was a slow epiphany, but a realization that it was something I should have been doing, my whole life. I mean, I loved being at uni. I loved studying. I have a degree in botany and ecology, and was learning the science and the names of plants was like learning another language that I just loved. But once I was out in my back room making stuff with my hands, it just felt like everything just kind of clicked into place. I was working with clients one-on-one to create beautiful pieces that I felt really proud of, and I enjoyed the process of making. And then I got to hand that over, and they gave me money for it. And then I got to start all over again, and it just felt like everything just worked out beautifully. I mean, there's been plenty of quiet periods where I haven't had enough work, and huge obstacles where I've designed a piece that I literally don't know how to build, and I've got to figure that out. But the logistics, the raw, making stuff with my hands, looking at something beautiful, and then giving that to someone else and seeing them enjoy that, and them using that, hopefully for the rest of their lives, and getting paid for that. It's just beautiful. It just works out well. When Timbecon approached me years ago, looking for someone to shoot present some videos for them, I said yes, because I'm in the habit of saying yes to everything. As someone who runs their own small business, that seems to be a trap that a lot of people fall into. But I'm always interested in expanding what I do in the diverse sense of my experience with woodworking and this this whole industry. What it has done for me is just forced my continual education about a variety of woodworking topics and tools that I might not have had to branch out into. So to be able to teach a video or present a video that I'm confident on the material, I have to spend a whole bunch of time making sure I know that material forward and backwards so that I can present it clearly. And that is a great way to teach yourself a whole bunch of things. You know, I've loved working with the people at Timbecon, and you know, learning about all sorts of new tools is a great side piece of my work. If you're in a position where you are providing for your family financially and you love making stuff in your back shed, my suggestion would probably be to just continue making stuff in your back shed. To start a small business, for me at least, I needed to be able to have the flexibility to not be making enough money some months. I was basically subsidizing my own education through my own poverty. If you are trying to jump in and make a living, that's tough. But there are plenty of people out there who are working a 9 to 5 and are phenomenal craftspeople who are making one-off pieces for clients, and each piece might take them, you know, a number of months, but they're still doing that process. And there's absolutely no reason that that process couldn't ramp up into a job that was part-time or full-time. I could be wrong, but I have the impression that a lot of woodworkers, especially, you know, really fine craftspeople, are burrowing deeper and deeper into a really specific niche and getting phenomenally skilled at that. And it's something that I do aspire to. But at this stage in my personal education, as being a completely self-taught woodworker, I'm just constantly drawn to learn new techniques and new areas, and that's not limited to working exclusively with timber. I have gone to night school to learn welding, and I integrate metal and acrylics and glass into my work. I work with all sorts of recycled timber, which presents unique problems that new milled timber does not present. So I'm really drawn to working in diverse medium and teaching myself a whole range of new techniques. I'll design a piece that I can see in my head, and I'll put that down into the computer, and I'll design pieces that I don't actually know how to build. I'll design shapes that I perhaps haven't seen made in timber before, or I'll think of a joinery technique or something that I might have only seen a picture of, and then I'll have to figure out how to learn that. And I'll give those designs to clients before I figure that out. And once they've given me the deposit, I have to figure it out. I have to figure it out quickly. And there's been numerous times where, as my friends and people who are around me will know, I'll just spend weeks puzzling over, how do I make this thing that I designed, and why did I design it this way? But it's a wonderful, if not terribly efficient way of just pushing your boundaries in terms of what you can make, and your ability to use a variety of unusual techniques which you have to figure out on your own. And I admire the specialization that people have, and I really would like to achieve that level of like really fine craftsmanship in my life. But as a young maker, I feel like I'm just exploring everything I can right now and making some beautiful pieces in the process. I'd say it's a really natural process for most makers to push themselves into more and more challenging techniques. I mean, that's how we all progress and learn, and certainly for me it's been a good process. But by all means, you know, once you've figured out how to do a miter join, then figure out how to do a finger join, then figure out how to do a nice dovetail join, and then there's just innumerable techniques that have been explored throughout the ages. Don't be held to techniques that other people have done. I've done some joinery that I've never seen before, and it doesn't mean that it was the best way to join that piece of furniture, but it was something that I figured out on my own, and I imagined it and I wanted to do it, and that's what I did. Everyone learns and works in different ways, but do whatever works for you. Keep exploring, keep making new stuff, and looking at other people's work for inspiration, and coming up with your own designs at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep. Whatever you can do to just keep making and keep exploring and keep learning and keep making beautiful work with wood.